The keys were covered in a thin film, not dirty, just forgotten. My fingers moved gently, tracing the edge of the wood first, then the keys. I didn't use a cloth, just my hand. He watched, not saying anything. I could feel his eyes on me, and something in my chest pulled. Then his hand came down, slowly, onto mine. Not grabbing, not guiding, just there. It startled me, but I didn't move. His palm settled over my hand, light at first, then with the barest pressure, like he wasn't sure if he had the right. His hand was dry, warm, slightly trembling, not from the stroke, from something else. I didn't look up. The dust shifted under our skin, our fingers barely moving. It wasn't sensual. It wasn't meant to be. It was a remembering. I felt the air leave my lungs in a quiet breath. His other hand touched my forearm, barely. His thumb traced the curve near my elbow, not to hold, but to know it was real. My knees felt unsteady, but I didn't pull away. His breath was near now, just over my shoulder. I could feel it move the tiny hairs near my neck. I don't think he even knew how close he was. I pressed my palm down on the keys slowly. The faint sound it made, a single low note, lingered in the stillness. He didn't flinch. He leaned in. His mouth found my shoulder, just the fabric at first, the cotton sleeve of my blouse. But I felt it, his lips soft and unsure, his breath unsteady. I whispered something I didn't plan to say. "Julian." He paused, then exhaled. He didn't respond. Just let his forehead rest gently on the curve between my neck and shoulder, as if that spot was safe. My eyes closed. I should have said something. I should have stopped it. Instead, I turned my body slightly, just enough for our sides to touch. The length of his chest aligned with my arm. I felt his heartbeat, slow, steady, then faster. I could have walked away. My keys were still in the doorway tray. My shoes were untied. My bag was zipped, but my feet didn't move. His hand slid down, tentative, brushing the outside of my thigh. Not claiming, not even exploring. Just tracing the line of where I stood, like trying to remember something long forgotten. I should go, I should. He touched the back of my knee. I inhaled. Too sharp. It broke something. He stepped closer. My back touched the piano edge now. One of the legs creaked. I grabbed it instinctively. Not out of fear, but to hold myself steady. He looked at me. Not my mouth, not my chest, just my face. Like he was memorizing it. And then, sir, with no sound for that to hit. His lips met mine. Soft, slow, hesitant. I didn't open mine at first, but I didn't stop him either. His hands were on my waist now, not gripping, just resting, as if asking my body if it could stay a little longer. I leaned in. My lips parted. He breathed me in. God. It was like warmth rushing through a body that had forgotten what it meant to be held. My legs felt weak, but he steadied me. His hands trembled, not from lust, but from lack. I felt it, the ache in him, not a hunger, a silence, years of it. He kissed me again, deeper this time. Still slow, but with something behind it now. Not urgency, not power, just relief. Like, for a moment he could pretend none of it had been taken from him. I moaned, not loudly, not performative, just a soft, involuntary sound, like breath breaking against skin. My words fell apart, became heat, became sound, became nothing. His mouth moved lower, from jaw to neck, to the edge of my collarbone, each place a pause, not a pursuit. The fabric shifted. I tilted back just a little and felt the edge of the keys against my spine. The piano breathed too, with us. I felt one of the higher notes press against my ribs. A whisper of music without motion. He ran his fingers along the side of my ribs, barely touching, almost reverent. Like I was an instrument he didn't know how to play anymore. My blouse shifted slightly as his hand paused beneath the hem, fingertips near skin, hesitant, unsure. I gasped. My hands gripped the edge of the piano harder. Don't wait. I wasn't saying no, but I wasn't ready to say yes either. His lips paused on my shoulder. He stayed there, breathing, not pushing, just present. We stood that way, no music, no words, just the hum of what we both hadn't let ourselves feel in a very long time. His cheek brushed against mine, and I turned to face him fully. He looked older than usual, but not weaker, just Nas. I touched his face. He closed his eyes. I let my forehead rest against his. Neither of us said anything. We didn't need to. I wasn't planning to fall apart that night, but maybe that's the only way I knew how to feel real again. And maybe that was the only language he understood too. His hand was already under my blouse, not rushing, just there. Fingertips against bare skin, my stomach, my side, my back, slowly exploring, slowly remembering, as if he thought this might be the last time he could touch someone this way. And I let him. My own hand had somehow found his wrist, not to stop him, but to anchor him there. The way you hold someone's hand in the dark, not because you're afraid, but because it's the only thing keeping you from drifting. I wasn't cold, but I shivered when he exhaled near my neck. The room was quiet, just the soft creak of the bench beneath us and the occasional shift of our weight against the piano. He kissed the hollow of my throat, then the edge of my jaw. I turned to meet his mouth, this time fully. It wasn't a question anymore. He pressed into me gently, body to body, and I didn't pull away. My back arched slightly against the curve of the piano lid, and I felt the keys press lightly against my spine. Notes. We weren't playing, still whispered between us. He groaned, low and raw, not like a man lost in lust, but like a man who had finally found somewhere to land. I pressed my thighs together instinctively. My breath faltered. I don't. My mouth was trembling. Don't stop, I whispered. And he didn't. His hands moved upward, tracing along the curve beneath the fabric, stopping just before it meant more. He stopped right at the edge, paused, just breathing, just holding. His restraint broke me more than anything else. He didn't take, he didn't rush. He held me like I was the only softness left in a world that had gone cold. Why does this feel like rescue? He sat back slightly, eyes on mine, and for a full 5 seconds, neither of us blinked. His thumb grazed the corner of my lip. I kissed it. That was the moment I knew this wasn't going to be undone. I slid my hands under his sweater, just enough to feel the warmth of his back, steady and real. There was still strength there, and control. I wanted to feel all of it. He kissed me again, slower this time. A different kind of kiss. The kind you give when you know you're touching someone you were never meant to reach. A dangerous kind of kindness. His hands wrapped around my hips, pulling me gently closer. Never aggressive, just aligned, fitted, like we'd done this in another life, and our bodies remembered how. I gasped when his thigh touched mine. Not from fear, but from the memory it pulled up. He pulled back. "I'm sorry," he said softly. I shook my head. "Don't be." He didn't speak again. He just leaned in, resting his cheek against my temple. And I let my hands fall around him like it was always supposed to be this way. We didn't move, just breathed. One of his hands stroked my lower back, slow and rhythmic, not trying to seduce me, just letting me feel him there, present, real, not a memory, not a regret. A man, right here, right now. He didn't say much, but he never had to. His silence was a kind of shelter, not absence, not avoidance, just space. I closed my eyes and let my forehead fall into the curve of his neck. I don't know how long we stayed that way. I don't even know what part of me melted first. My mind, my breath, or the armor I wore around men like him. But when I opened my eyes, I knew something had changed. His hand was still on my back, his breath still slow and steady. But the ache in his touch had softened, like maybe for now this was enough. Like maybe for now I was. The next morning, I pretended to check my phone. He pretended not to notice. The air smelled faintly of lemon oil. He must have wiped down the piano after I left the night before. Or maybe he always did that. I didn't ask. He handed me a mug. "Didn't know how you take it," he said. I took it black. We sat in silence. Not a comfortable one, not an awkward one either, just full. There were only 2 chairs in the kitchen. One creaked when I sat. I glanced at the piano from the doorway. The dust was gone. My handprint was still visible across the lid. Faint, but there. He didn't look at it. He stirred his tea twice, then didn't drink it. His hand rested near the spoon, not twitching, not fidgeting, just still, like he was anchoring himself to something physical, because the rest of him was somewhere else. He didn't reach for me, but when he stood to get more hot water, his arm brushed mine. Not enough to be called a touch, but enough to remind me that last night wasn't imagined. We weren't pretending very well. I looked at his back as he stood by the kettle. His shoulder blades moved slowly beneath the fabric of his gray sweater. Not tense, just tired. He poured his tea, then held the cup for a second longer than needed. He remembered too. He didn't say anything, but his hand lingered near mine when he placed the sugar jar between us. Not close enough to touch, just close enough to notice. He never looked up. He just said, "Let me know if it's too much today." He meant the stretches, the work, the contact, but I heard everything else in it. The heat from the mug seeped into my palms. I didn't drink it, just held it. I wanted to reach for him again. Instead, I asked him to turn his head left, like always. We started the session without moving from the kitchen. I watched his neck as he followed the motion, the slight wrinkle behind his ear, the way his throat moved when he swallowed. And for a second, I saw it all again. My hand on the piano, his lips on my shoulder, the stillness before it broke. He didn't look at me, but when I guided his arm up and over, the passive range of motion, I felt the pause in his breath when my fingers found the crook of his elbow. His skin was warm, still warm. We didn't speak the entire session, but when I helped him lower his arm and my hand brushed his wrist, he looked at me, just for a second, and I saw it there. He hadn't forgotten. He was just trying to survive it. I moved on to the next stretch. A lot of people here are between 45 and 60. Just comment where you're watching from. Sometimes the world feels smaller than we think. We ended early. He said he was tired. I didn't argue. I packed slowly, not because I wanted to stay, but because I wasn't ready to leave yet either. When I bent down to grab my clipboard, he stood nearby. I felt his presence more than I saw it. His breathing changed. I caught the shift in the air, the gentle discomfort of two people orbiting something unspoken. When I stood again, we were inches apart, but he didn't move back. He just looked at me. Not hungry, not guilty, just wide open. His hand twitched slightly, like he almost wanted to lift it. Almost, but didn't. And then he turned away, not to walk out, just to give me a way out if I needed it. He never said what he wanted, but he stayed longer than he should have. I didn't tell anyone I was seeing a private patient again. After the separation, I told myself I'd stop taking on extra work. I was already burnt out. Hospitals, rehab centers, family members who thought I could fix everything with 2 hands and a stretch band. Julian wasn't supposed to be an exception, but something about the way he didn't ask for anything, that made it easier to say yes. It started with twice a week, then 3. Then sometimes he'd call and say his shoulder felt stiff, and I'd come the next day. I didn't need the money. I needed the quiet. Julian's house was like stepping into a held breath. The curtains were always slightly drawn. The air always smelled faintly of varnished wood and old paper. And when he moved, it was slow. Not lazy, just deliberate. Like every motion had once been choreography. Sometimes when I helped him stand, I could feel the hesitation before he let me take his weight. He didn't want to be held, but he didn't fight it either. There were afternoons we didn't say more than a few sentences. I'd guide his arm, flex his fingers, adjust his neck, and he'd follow with barely a sound. Then he'd say something like, "You always keep your voice steady when you count," or, "I used to watch my hands more than the keys." Comments that didn't need answers, just presence. He didn't promise anything. That made it feel safer. I didn't talk about my ex. Julian never asked. But I caught him looking at the band mark, still faint on my ring finger. Once, when I reached to lift his arm, he didn't say a word, just breathed. The first time I laughed in his house was when I tripped over a throw rug and nearly spilled the TENS unit on the floor. He didn't move fast enough to catch it, but he tried. Just a quick half step and a hand out. Neither of us caught anything. But I remember the way we looked at each other afterward, like we both needed to know what the other's laugh sounded like. After that, he started keeping the kettle warm, just in case. Sometimes he'd play recordings from his old concerts in the background while I worked. Not loudly, barely above a whisper. The soft run of keys from some forgotten recital in Prague. His hands didn't move when it played, but his jaw tightened. I never asked if he missed it. I just kept wiping down the equipment in silence. It wasn't a kiss, it was the pause before one. The first time we sat together without the session in between, it was because of the rain. I was packing up, already half-zipped, and the sky just opened up outside. Thunder, steady and low. A line of water curling down the big front window. He offered me a glass of wine. I declined. Then he said, "It's not open, just poured. You don't have to stay." But I stayed. He poured me half. We sat in the room where the piano was. Neither of us spoke for 10 minutes. The only sound was the rain, the occasional creak of wood under shifting weight, and the soft clink of glass when I set mine down. Then, out of nowhere, he asked, "Do you dream in color?" I blinked. He didn't explain, just sipped. I said, "Only when I'm exhausted." He nodded. That was it. That night, when I left, he walked me to the door, not out of politeness, just presence. He didn't touch me, but he opened the door slowly. As I stepped out, he adjusted the scarf around my neck, barely a tug, like a man who used to be someone's everything. That night, I didn't sleep. I could still feel the weight of his fingers on fabric that had barely touched my skin. It didn't happen the next day, or the one after that, but it built. In the way his eyes lingered a second too long when I reached for the stretch band, in how his fingers no longer resisted mine, how he let me guide him like music, in the silence between words. That day, I came later than usual. I'd had a migraine. He offered me his guest bedroom, said I could lie down before we started. I said no, but I sat on the edge of his couch longer than necessary. The piano was uncovered that day. He had removed the cloth. It was open, waiting. I didn't ask why. He looked at it, then at me, then said, "Do you want to try something different?" I nodded before I knew what he meant. He asked me to sit beside him. His bench, his space. I hesitated, then moved slowly. My thigh brushed his. He didn't move away. We sat in front of the keys. He lifted his left hand, the one that still trembled, and placed it gently on the highest octave. Then his right hand, the good one, found mine. He guided my fingers down to the middle keys, pressed lightly. The note rang out, full, clear, like breath in an empty room. He didn't look at the keys, he looked at me, and that's when it broke. His hand moved to my cheek. Not hurried, not unsure. Like he'd been rehearsing this for weeks. I turned toward him. My knees shifted. Our legs aligned. His lips met mine. Not like the first time. This one had no apology, only ache. I gasped into him, not out of fear, out of relief. His hands, one steady, one faintly shaking, moved gently along my sides and waist, stopping just beneath the ribs. He didn't ask for permission. He didn't need to. My body had already said yes. I leaned back slightly, letting him follow, His mouth traveled from my lips to my jaw to the dip just below my ear. I felt it in my knees. I whispered, "Wait." But I didn't mean it. I meant keep going, but slower. He breathed into my neck. And then, carefully, he adjusted the blouse, letting the fabric slip off one shoulder. Slow and uncertain. The fabric gave way like it wanted to. His lips found skin. Warm, familiar, shocking. I pressed my hand against his chest. Not to stop, to feel. The weight of him, the age in him, the years between us collapsing. I moaned, barely audible, but he heard it. His breath caught. His hand trembled again. This time, I held it. He didn't say anything, just let me guide it. Palm to skin, fingers to the curve, just below my ribs. I whispered into his collar, "I don't know what this is." He nodded once against my hair. "I don't either." He kissed my shoulder again, then just near the line where fabric met skin. No further, then lower. I let my head fall back. Please. My breath broke into syllables. Not words, just sound. My thighs shifted beneath the bench. Not in invitation, but in quiet reaction to the weight between us. He steadied me, one hand behind my back, the other at my hip. He didn't lift my blouse. He didn't undress me, but I've never felt more bare. His mouth found the line of my collarbone. I exhaled his name. His fingers pressed into my waist, but he didn't pull. He just held me there, as if that was the thing he needed most. Not the kiss, not the heat, just the anchor. I didn't want this to mean everything, but it did. He looked at me again, this time longer, and I saw it in his eyes. Not lust, not triumph, but hunger. The kind that comes from too many years without being seen. He touched me like I was music, like I was the only sound he remembered how to play, and I let him. We didn't speak after, we just sat. Bodies close, breath shared, nothing said. Everything known. We didn't talk about it. That made it worse. The next time I came over, the piano was covered again. The cloth was neatly folded at the corners, like someone had taken extra care. I didn't ask if it was him. I placed my bag beside the couch. He didn't meet me at the door like usual, just called from the other room. "Coffee's hot." I found 2 mugs on the table. Mine was already poured. 1 sugar, no cream. The way I liked it. The way I never told him. He remembered. We sat across from each other, not speaking, not avoiding. He lifted his cup, then put it down without drinking. I watched the steam rise between us. It curled like something alive, something too soft to hold on to. He reached for the spoon and stirred once, then again. The sound filled the room more than any words could. I shifted in my seat. He glanced up, just once, then down again. I reached for the folded napkin beside the cup. Under it, a pressed flower, tiny, purple, dried but intact, lavender. I looked at him. He didn't explain. He just said, "It reminded me of how your hair smelled that day." Then sipped his coffee. He didn't come back, but the mug was still warm. The sessions continued, same routines, same motions, but everything was softer. His touch, my voice, the way we handed each other, things like they might break. Once, when I adjusted the strap on his wrist support, His hand hovered above mine for just a second too long. He didn't grip, but he didn't pull away either. I started wearing sleeves again, looser clothes, not to hide, just to make it harder to remember. Sometimes he'd ask me to stay for tea. Sometimes I said yes, and we'd sit on opposite ends of the couch, not speaking, just existing, a kind of truce with the silence. One afternoon it rained again. Harder this time. He didn't offer me wine, just opened the window slightly and said, "It's a good sound, isn't it?" I nodded. We didn't touch, but the bench still held the shape of us. We were never going to be something, but we also weren't nothing. The last session came quietly. He didn't say it was the last, but I knew. He moved better, stronger, more confident. He didn't need my help lifting his arm anymore. At the end, he said, "You gave me more than therapy." I didn't ask what he meant. I was afraid I already knew. He walked me to the door. The sun was setting through the blinds, those long orange lines across the floor that make everything feel cinematic and too fragile to hold. I turned to say goodbye. He reached for something in his pocket, then stopped. His fingers flexed once, then again. But he didn't give it to me. He just said, "Take care, Lena." My name in his voice. The first time he'd said it since that night. I nodded, turned the handle. But before I stepped out, I looked back. He was standing there, still holding whatever it was, still not offering it. But his eyes, they were full of everything we never said. I reached for him like a lifeline. But maybe I wasn't drowning. Maybe I was dragging him under too. And still, I'd do it again. I'm not proud of what I did, but I'm not sorry either. There are some moments that don't fit into categories like right or wrong. They just happen. And once they do, they never unhappen. He never said what he wanted, but he stayed. In the room, in the moment, in the silence, longer than anyone else ever had. There were things I never told him, things he probably never told anyone. But for a little while, I didn't feel broken, I just felt. And I think that mattered to him too. Maybe we never should have crossed that line, but it was never really a line, it was a crack. And we both fell through it, together. If you're still holding the weight of something you never got to say, you're not alone. Sometimes we're not looking for a love story. We're just hoping to feel something real before the quiet gets too loud. If you've ever kept a memory folded in your chest like a secret, just to remind yourself that once someone saw you, really saw you, this story was for you. If any part of this found you tonight, maybe don't let it sit in the dark. There's someone else watching, someone else listening, maybe even someone nearby who knows that kind of ache. Leave a comment with where you're from, that's all. Just your city, or your town, or a place that means something to you. You never know who might see it, and need to know they're not the only one awake. Sometimes that's enough. This story was told emotionally from the narrator's point of view. Some details have been changed to protect the privacy of those involved, but every silence, every hesitation, and every moment you just heard was real.